this particular session, we're going to look at how you can maximize rewards with smart and responsible credit spending. Now, I'm going to ask, raise of hand, who likes to travel in style? Wow, I love you straight. Travel, yes, me, yes, we're all coming in. And if you can travel, on your rewards, isn't that wonderful? How can we earn some points and travel, in style with our rewards as well? Although with that, there's always that delicate balance, which is how can we also maintain a healthy finance as well? How do we balance it all out? So that's what we're going to look at, because one of the things you want to be aware of, and we've heard of all these cautionary tales about how credit card debts, right, it can lead to certain consequences and situations that we don't want to find ourselves in. So today, to share with us more insights, it is my absolute pleasure to invite on stage our two speakers. We have Mr. Aaron Wong, founder of the MileLion. Welcome, Aaron. And also, we have Tan Hui Min, General Manager, Credit Counselling Singapore. Welcome, Hui Min. Please take your seats, get yourselves comfortable. Okay, so what's going to happen is this, later on, we'll be showing the QR code, we'll get your thoughts and post straight away. But today, we have our two experts to give us a sense of what we need to do in order to maximize rewards with smart and responsible credit spending. First, if we could kick off, Aaron. Already just now, I say who like to travel, all the hands flew up. So if you could just share with us a bit more about the MileLion and how our audience here can utilize, the resource that you have. Because I went on the website and I realized there's a lot of very useful information if you are someone who loves to travel.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for having me. So in so many words, I started the MileLion to teach people how to travel better for less. And what I guess you'd call the guiding principle behind it is that first and business class travel shouldn't be the exclusive domain of the rich and well-heeled. And by understanding the ins and outs of credit cards, airline, and hotel loyalty programs, regular people can enjoy such perks as well. So on the MileLion, I cover everything you need to know about crafting a credit card miles strategy, about how to leverage things like sign-up bonuses, category bonuses to turn today's spending into tomorrow's vacation. So it's basically earning a bigger return on spending than on the spending that you would otherwise have done anyway.
Yeah, make your money work for you.
Yeah, it's exactly right. So if it's going to be, if you need to spend that money anyway, then how do you get the most out of it? And, of course, earning the miles and points is only half the story. The fun comes in redeeming them. And on the MileLion, I have resources on airline hotel loyalty programs and how to get the most value out of your miles and points redemptions as well.
Fantastic. So lots to look forward to, lots to learn. Yeah, everyone's very eager about it. Hui Min, I'm going to invite you in. If you could share with us a bit more for audience member who are not familiar. Credit Counselling Singapore, or CCS for short. I know it's a non-profit, it's a registered charity. What is some of the purpose, if you could give us a short introduction?
Sure. I suppose many of you come here for Aaron's talk.
But we need everyone to be mindful as well. That's why we bring you in, yeah?
Sure. Okay, for those of you who have not heard about us, Credit Counselling Singapore, CCS, is a not-for-profit organization that helps people to deal with an unsecured debt problem, specifically credit cards and personal loans. Okay, a lot of times people who knows me, see me, say, oh, you're going to talk about that. I say, today, no. Today I'm going to talk about credit card use. Okay, and now, even though we are here to I would say that CCS is meant to help people to resolve a debt problem. It doesn't mean that we tell people cannot use credit. It's not. It's just that how to use it wisely so that we don't get ourselves into trouble, and use it wisely enough and enjoy all the perks that Aaron's going to share later on.
Absolutely, the responsible piece, right? How can we be responsible in our spending as well? So when it comes to accumulating rewards and miles, one thing we need to do, of course, is to spend. But how can we spend it in a responsible way so that we don't incur debt? How do we get that balance right? So we're going to kick off with a poll question. We're going to put the QR code up on screen. Going to invite you to whip up your phone. And if you could scan the QR code, First question that we have for you is this, okay? Just want to get a sense in the room. How confident are you when it comes to managing credit card spending responsibly? That's the key piece, responsibly. We have 4 options for you, ranging from very confident to not very confident. If you could just pop it into your options, and then we'll pull up the results in just a short while. If you have any difficulty getting into the Menti and access the poll question, please let us know. Can you access? Yes, can. Great. Okay, let's pop up the results and let's see. Very confident. Whoa. Is this what you expect to see typically, Hui Min?
Okay. You see, the people we see at our office are people who have pretty much messed up. So I don't think some of them could have thought that they were okay to manage. In fact, people who come forward to see us, many of them are actually fairly educated, I would say. It's not that they have no financial literacy, but it takes more than just financial literacy to do well in managing your credit card usage.
Okay.
And this is something to take,
Into consideration.
Yes.
Okay, and we'll come more into that. Second question, everybody. So curious here, and this could be interest for Aaron as well after that. What is the main reason you use your credit cards? What is or are some of the main reasons that you use your credit cards? And you can choose more than one option. We've got 4 options there. Everyday purchases, convenience, specifically to earn rewards, cashbacks, miles, points, emergency funds or large purchases, or I don't use credit cards. Aaron's like, then why are you here?
It's almost like blasphemy to say that here. It's terrible.
Let's take a look, okay? Let's pop up the results again. Everyday purchases, convenience, earning rewards. Okay, so we've got a big group down here who's trying to, as you say, make your money work for you. Yeah, since we use it for everyday purchases, convenience, how can we also use it to earn rewards as well? Okay, great. So just to give us a sense of the audience that we have. Thank you very much for that. So Singapore, we of course do have a very robust credit card ecosystem, and there's a huge range of options that's tailored to various lifestyle, and that's something that we're going to get Aaron to share with us around. What are some strategies depending on your lifestyle? What can you do to maximize your rewards? But first, we wanted to just have take the scene and maybe just get from Aaron and Hui Min as well first. What does smart and responsible credit spending mean to you? Right, so that's our title down here, smart and responsible credit spending. Aaron, what does smart and responsible credit spending mean to you?
Yeah, I think for me, there's 2 parts to this question, right? So the first part is not leaving money on the table. And what I mean by that is every time you don't optimize your card strategy, if you were to, let's say a merchant takes credit cards, but you choose to pay with Nets or PayNow or a debit card, you're basically leaving money on the table because the bank would have been willing to reward you with a bigger reward had you used the right card, only that you didn't take it. And even if you do use a credit card, if you use the wrong card in a given situation, then you're also getting a suboptimal return because, again, there was additional rewards to be had, but you didn't take it. So not leaving money on the table is one big part of it. I mean, I feel physical pain when I see people paying with the wrong card. I have seen in restaurants people having a CNY banquet and paying the bill with a debit card, which makes me feel all sorts of emotions and makes me say words that I can't repeat in polite company. But the other part to it, I'd say, is also about not putting extra money on the table, right? And what do I mean by that? I mean that the whole purpose, why I feel that why I use credit cards is because I don't want to leave money, I don't want to leave extra value behind. So if I'm going to spend this amount of money anyway, my rationale is I might as well earn the biggest return on it. But what I don't use credit cards for is to spend more than I already have. So to the extent that credit cards make you spend more than you otherwise would have, obviously that's not good, right? Because that is then inducing you to spend additional money. So don't put additional money down, right? Don't end up paying things like late fees or interest. Don't use credit cards as an excuse to spend more than you have, right? Keep viewing credit cards as a way of not leaving money on the table, and I think that's my general approach for it.
Okay, not leaving money on the table. Yeah, how can we optimize it for the best value? How about you, Hui Min? What does smart, responsible credit spending mean to you?
I think one thing is that when we use credit card, we have to remember that we are using the bank's money. Okay, so this is something that I think we have to be very real about it, meaning that if I don't have money to pay off my outstanding at the end of the month, perhaps I shouldn't be using my credit card to pay for the item. Because not paying off the full amount, it means that I have to start paying interest for it. Okay, so just remember, we are using borrowed money when we use credit card.
You had a point there?
Yeah, I basically ignore the credit in credit cards, right? Because I don't feel that you should be spending money that you don't have anyway. I think the better way of viewing credit cards is debit cards with better rewards, in the sense that you don't use it to spend more money than you already have, right? So for me, the whole credit part, for all intents and purposes, doesn't really register, because I don't think that it's wise by any means to be spending more than you have in the first place.
Yeah, because when you do, that runs some risks. In fact, our next poll question is this. We're going to ask everybody, pop into the poll, make a guess down here. In the first quarter of 2024, which is this year, right? Bad credit card debt approximately increased by, what do you think? How many percent? 50, 20, or 90%? So this is a Singapore statistic. What do you think? 50%, majority? Yeah. Some of you are saying, yeah, climbing up, 20%. Some saying that maybe 90%. Just going to give you another last 3 seconds to place your vote in. Okay, so looks like majority of you are saying that credit card debt increased by approximately 50%. We do have some stats. Can we show the slide with the stats that's coming up next? They don't have it? It's okay. The actual answer is this, okay? It's actually closer to 20%. The actual amount is 19.7%, and it went up to $89.4 million. Yeah, and that's a stat that we had from Straits Times. So, Hui Min, if we could just give us a bit of sense, right? So we need to consider this idea of credit card debt. What are some of the trends that we're seeing in Singapore when it comes to credit debt or when it comes to managing debt?
Okay, compared to second half of last year, the first half of this year, we do see an increase of about 18% of people coming to seek help from Credit Counselling Singapore. All right. Now, generally speaking, people do not want to come to CCS unless they really got no choice, okay, because they really cannot pay their monthly statement figure, not even the minimum amount, okay. And of course, when a person can't even service the minimum amount, it really signals that the person is really having some debt issue. All right. So I would suggest that, that's why I said, do not think that I use credit card money, I can buy because I got the credit facilities. It's not an issue. I can pay my minimum money payment. I'm doing fine. It's not. If I can't pay off totally at the end of the billing cycle, it's not fine. Okay. Yeah. So have to be very mindful.
So this is exactly what I think, Aaron, you're talking about, right? Not having the word credit in front, but reframing it as debit card with rewards. So let's dive into that piece around rewards these days. So, Aaron, can you break down for us, right? Everyone's very curious to know cashback, points, air miles, how does these different reward system work and how can we maximize then to earn and redeem, especially if it talks about miles?
Sure. So maybe it's helpful to just do a brief overview of the different types of reward systems and who they're more suited for. If you think about credit card rewards in Singapore, I'd say, broadly speaking, you've got cashback, what I refer to as a fixed reward, because the value of $1 of cashback is $1. And then you have miles and points, which I refer to as variable rewards, because the value of a mile or a point depends on what you spend it for. So it also therefore follows that there are good ways of spending your miles and points, and there are not so good ways of spending them as well. So cashback, I think, is more intuitive for most people, because you probably have a good sense of what you can do with $1. Whereas people might be less clear on what exactly a mile is worth or what I can do with all my points. Cashback users in general prefer a short-term payoff, right? Because I spend this month, I get my cashback in the very following month. They tend to be more value-oriented, looking for ways to minimize total expenses. Cashback, I will also say, does have more certainty because, value of a dollar is a dollar. But there's also less upside in the fact that, well, put it this way, I don't think anyone's ever earned a first-class ticket through cashback alone. Or if you did, you're spending good amounts of money, which might or may not be a good thing. And lastly, I think that cashback is a relatively simple means of a reward. So then if you think about miles and points, right, in general, the payoff horizon tends to be longer, right? Maybe some people are spending enough to earn a first-class ticket in 1 month. That's great again. But for the vast majority of people, it could be as many as 1 or 2 years before you see what the payoff is, especially if you want to go somewhere further. I find that people who value miles and points tend to be more experiences-oriented people. If miles and points did not exist, probably most of us would never see the inside of a first or business class cabin. But because they do exist, right, because there is something called miles and points, I can therefore use it to access a kind of experience I wouldn't otherwise have been willing or able to afford. Now, obviously, miles and points is a more complicated reward system than cashback. There's no denying that, right? There are rules to learn, there are award charts to familiarize yourself with, but the payoff can be so much more amazing because, I think everyone has certain things they remember in life, like their first kiss, their first child. For me, it was my first business class flight, right? Just having that experience and realizing that I didn't spend the silly amounts of money that many other people in the cabin did felt pretty good. Yeah, and it is obviously more complicated. There are rules to learn, but I think those people who are willing to invest a bit of time to understand the ins and outs will find that miles and points can be a very, very rewarding pursuit.
I think we all like to be in that position, right? To be seated in business class and look around and go, ha ha, I got it with my air miles and not spending a ridiculous amount of money.
It is a bit of an intoxicating experience, yes, just full feeling of smartness and satisfaction, but...
So give us some tips down here, okay? We want to experience that as well, Aaron. What are some strategies, in terms of our spending, so that we can really maximize and earn our miles?
Sure. Yeah, I think when it comes to things like miles, the two things I always tell people to think about when trying to accelerate the miles balance is to think of ways to, number one, maximize your welcome bonuses. Now, these are, as the name suggests, these are things that the bank dangles in order to entice people to sign up for cards. So for example, if you sign up for a given credit card and you spend this amount within a certain time frame, the bank then gives you a certain number of bonus miles, right? So that's the first point. The second point has to do with category bonuses. So this is what I refer to when I talk about right card for right situation. So if I'm dining out, what's the best card to use? If I'm shopping, what's the best card to use, right? How do I ensure that, going back to my previous point, I'm not leaving money on the table when I spend? So I think that between these two, if you're able to maximize your welcome bonuses, if you look out for the attractive ones and time your signups during those periods, and if you have a good coherent miles strategy, that means you're using the right card in the right situation. Those are two very simple ways that people can accelerate their miles collection. I mean, I have seen people who say they want to play the miles game, but then they just get one card and use it everywhere, right? Out of simplicity, or you look very guilty right now.
I look very guilty because I'm someone like that. Exactly.
Yes, and I mean, you can. There's no rule saying you can't use one card everywhere, but I find it to be very inefficient. I think a good analogy is think of it as different tools, right? Like you wouldn't use a bottle opener to open a bottle of wine. You wouldn't use a corkscrew to open a beer bottle, right? So by using the wrong tool in the wrong situation, it's a lot more inefficient. And ultimately, we talk about getting most bang for your buck, right? If you're using the same card everywhere, maybe there's some transactions where you're getting a good return, but then there are also others where you're not. And therefore, your overall efficiency or return on your spending is therefore reduced.
Thanks for that, right? Absolutely, I like the analogy, right? Using, the opener for different kinds of bottle doesn't really make sense at all. We're just going to pull up the QR code. So if you have any question, please do not hesitate, okay? We'd love to take as many questions as you may have for both Aaron and Hui Min during this live session. So this is your opportunity to ask, yeah? So make sure you ask your questions. So you talked about that maximizing the welcome bonus. So we're going to just spend a bit of time about maximizing rewards here first before I bring Hui Min into the conversation again. Maximizing welcome bonus, it sounds like then we need to utilize a more multi-card strategy, yeah? And of course, then there is inherently the risk when you have more credit cards as well. So what is your thought on multi-card strategy, best way forward, or how should we balance depending on our lifestyle?
Sure. So as I alluded to earlier, right, I think that if you do want to play the miles game, then using one card is probably insufficient for most people. Now, on the other hand, it's not the case that if you want to earn miles quickly, you have to go and get 24 credit cards, right? It doesn't necessarily follow. I think that most people using 3 or 4 cards in the right situation would be able to have a very coherent miles strategy going. So it's not necessarily that more cards is better. However, there are situations where you might find yourself, perhaps there's an attractive sign-up bonus for a given bank, right? Now, banks in recent times have gone very big on the acquisition offers. I mean, when I first started doing this 10 years ago, it was, you'd be lucky if you got like a beach towel when you sign up for a credit card. Nowadays, we see the banks dangling as much as $400, even $500 of cash sometimes, just for signing up for a new card. So it's quite clear that the banks in recent times have this impetus to sign up a lot of new customers. And I want to caveat this, provided you know what you're doing, right? This can be very, very lucrative. So something I always tell people is that if you don't have a card from a given bank, you're very valuable to that bank because banks measure the performance based on how many new customers they can acquire, defined as someone who doesn't have any of their cards right now. And it's for that reason that I tell people that you don't just sign up for cards willy-nilly, right? You need to wait for a good opportunity. So I have seen credit card promoters in the MRT stations, right? And then they approach people and say, hey, if you sign up for a card today, you get like a water bottle or like I don't know, like a very nice looking gym towel.
Do you want to run forward and stop them?
I have many emotions when I see that as well. But the whole point is that I know that same person, if he had gone to one of the financial comparison sites and signed up for a card, could have got like a PlayStation 5 in some cases, right? So it is about knowing when to sign up for a card, right? Obviously, you don't just sign up for every single card you see, but if you do see a good offer and if you know that there's a period of your life coming up where maybe I'll have some expenses, maybe I'm renovating my house, maybe my first kid's on the way, right? Maybe I'm getting married. If I know I'll have those expenses anyway, then that's a great opportunity to use that spending and meet the minimum spend for a sign-up bonus. And again, emphasis on spending that you would do anyway.
I think that's the key, right? Spending that you do anyway, right? My manager just got proposed to, so marriage is on the card. So then she's got to start thinking about, right, that big moment, what cards that can help to maximize for the honeymoon as well.
Exactly, right? So wedding is a great example because wedding, you have the banquet, you have all your wedding expenses, your dress and everything, and then after that, you've got the honeymoon, maybe you're going to start a home, you're going to furnish the house, right? To the extent that you already have a budget in mind, then you might as well look at ways of how do I get the most miles on that amount of spending, right? Now, obviously, you don't just go and say, well, because I have all these cards now, I should probably spend more to meet those minimum spending requirements. I think that thing's the wrong way around, right? It's given this amount of spending, how do I then strategize to get the most number of miles out of it?
I like how you emphasize, right, given that you are going to spend it anyway. So Hui Min, I'm going to bring you into this conversation because with credit card spending, sometimes the temptation is you spend beyond. Like you say, you're not using technically your money, it's the bank's money. What then do you say that we need to start looking out for? Because sometimes in our desire to earn that rewards or to earn that miles, we might end up overspending, right? So what are some red flags then from the perspective that someone is perhaps, running the risk of unhealthy spending habits with the credit card?
Before I talk about that, I just want to remind everyone, Aaron is an expert, right? For the past 10 years or so, he studies the credit card. He knows the in and out of credit cards. He knows the perks. He knows how to manage. He make a living on being a blogger about credit cards. So I think this is very important to take note. We can't compare ourselves to him, all right? As much as we would like to be like him, able to know whatever, but he spent full time. This is his profession. Okay, so for us who don't have the time to really know what card suits us best or whatever, we have to be very mindful. Okay, when it comes to spending with credit card, one way to have more control is not to have too many cards. All right, because you need to remember when is the due date. And credit cards, they will charge us subscription fee if we do not spend a certain amount. If I'm going to hold many cards, that means I have to spend a lot of money using my credit card in order not to pay the subscription fee. Okay, so this is something I think we need to be mindful. Now, what is a red flag? Okay, I would say that when I can't even pay the full amount, it's really a red flag. Why should I choose to pay only the minimum amount? Is it because I don't have enough money to pay off the full amount? Because by choosing paying the minimum, meaning that I will have to pay interest for it, okay? So if I see my outstanding balance of my credit cards are growing, definitely is a red flag, okay? So take stock, okay? For those of us who do use credit card, just give it a thought. Do I have any outstanding in any of my credit card? If I have, then ask myself, did I forgot to pay or did I not have enough money to pay? If I forgot to pay, then please quickly go and pay. But if I didn't pay down my outstanding is because I don't really have enough money in my bank to pay, then I think you need to sit down and
reevaluate
and do something about it.
Thank you. Aaron?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we're on the same page here because the moment you carry a balance on your credit card, the moment you start paying interest, it will almost certainly negate the value of any rewards earned, right? You think about the interest rates being charged on credit cards now, probably 26 to 28% APR at least, right? And compounding. So the moment you start paying interest on your card, you've already lost the miles game, right? Because any value of the miles is almost certainly going to be outweighed by the interest. I mean, banks are no fools, right? They know how to make money, right? And the APRs on credit cards are cost prohibitive. I mean, if you really need to borrow money, it's much cheaper to get a personal loan than to put it on your credit card. Absolutely.
So we're talking about credit card spend as well. One of the question that has come in, and maybe I think this is both for either one of you to consider as well. We're applying for several credit cards at one shot, and I know that's not your key advice, but you're saying that you want to be mindful when you're applying. Would it hurt my credit score? Someone from the audience very loud, I can hear already. Yes, it does. It says,
Let's go.
Well, the answer is yes and no, right? It certainly can if you do stupid things with those cards, if you don't pay off your bills on time, if you incur interest payments. But also, I think one important thing to remember is that being a fiscal hermit doesn't necessarily mean a good credit score, right? Because credit cards ultimately are a way that CBS and the banks, they evaluate whether or not you're a responsible user of credit. So I know people who have used maybe debit cards their whole life, and then when they do finally go and get a credit score done because maybe they're applying for a housing loan or something, they realize that the score is that CBS isn't able to get a good feel of how responsibly they use credit because there's simply no track record of it. So definitely applying for several cards at one go can be a red flag. However, if you then develop a track record of paying off those cards in full and on time every month, then that's a very good sign for the credit reporting bureaus because it shows that you are a responsible user of credit. So it's not unheard of for people who have multiple cards to have 2,000 credit scores, which is a perfect credit score, right? Is it 2,000 now? I think it's 2,000. Yeah, and it's also not unheard of for people who have one card to have a terrible credit score, right? So yes, it's certainly possible, but it does not necessarily follow, because the more important thing is whether or not you're responsibly using that credit.
I would say that please ask yourself, why do you need to apply to so many cards in one shot? Do you have a specific purpose that you want to take all the credit facilities to make some purchases? Then I would suggest please don't do that, because again, using up all your credit facilities for one purpose, it is unlikely that you may have enough money to pay off your credit card bill at the end of the month. Okay, different banks have got different risk appetite. Okay, some may give me X dollars, some may give me X plus Y dollar credit facilities. But generally speaking, applying for many credit cards or credit facilities within a short period of time, I would say that most of the time the banks don't view it too favorably. But of course, we do need to build up a credit record, meaning maybe start with one card, I use, I pay, that could help me to build a good credit record. So I'm not so sure the question, whoever is asking it, any reason why you are asking that question? Because there are different products to suit different needs. We do not use credit card to pay for renovation. We shouldn't. We should not use credit card facility to do down payment for a car or a house. Unless I really have the sum of money to pay off my credit card bill. I just want to clock in the amount and receive all the points and whatever, fine. But I need to be able to pay it off within 1 month or 2 months max.
Yeah, because if you have the money, I think absolutely right. I mean, you want to maximize that I've got the money, I'm going to make that payment and then get the points, accordingly.
The reason I say this is because we have come across individuals, for whatever reasons, the person wanted that property so much, the person used his cash advance from his credit card and personal loans to pay for the down payment. I mean, just think about it. I mean, you're paying like easily 26%. Of course, it was many years ago, the case I saw. But, I mean...
Don't use money, don't spend what you don't have, essentially.
Yes, precisely. I mean, why go and borrow that money and pay so high interest just because you want to buy that property? It doesn't make sense.
Okay. Yeah. We've got a couple questions here about converting the charges incurred when converting points to miles. Right? So, Aaron, I think this question is for you. There seem to be charges incurred when converting points to miles, so I find it very hard to see the value of a miles credit cards over a cashback credit card. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, first of all, conversion fees, they're annoying. Obviously, no one wants to pay a conversion fee, but I feel that in the grand scheme of things, right, it's almost insignificant, because you think about it, right? The typical bank will charge a $25 conversion fee when I want to convert my points into airline miles. And most people will convert maybe at most once or maybe twice a month, unless you're really, twice a year, unless you're really earning like in crazy amounts, in which case the $25 fee is definitely not, it's just a rounding error to you. So I don't necessarily think that conversion fees should be that big an impediment simply because you pay them so infrequently. And besides, there are also credit cards on the market that don't charge conversion fees. If conversion fees, you find that to be too much of an impediment, there are co-brand cards that will credit your miles directly into your KrisFlyer or your frequent flyer account. And then there are also there are some credit cards on the market that don't even charge conversion fees as well. So, like I said, no one wants to pay conversion fees, but I have a sneaking suspicion that, once you've redeemed your first business class ticket, you won't even remember paying the $25. So, avoid them where you can, but definitely not a deal breaker the way I see it.
It also does sound like, being very clear, what is your goal down here, right? If the goal is to use it to experience, for example, business class ticket, then of course it makes sense. But if you're someone that likes a short-term gain, then the cashback would be the one that immediately makes sense.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So look, I mean, cashback is obviously a lot more intuitive, and you're paid out every month, right? Some credit cards even offset it on the same month's bill. So your what's that term? Your reward cycle is very, very short, because spend now and get rewarded quickly.
So as Huey mentioned, right, Aaron, clearly you spend a lot of time doing this, researching this as well. So one of the difficulties I have, I'm not sure about all of you, which is why I keep things very simple. I have like one, maybe just two credit cards that I use often as well. And this question comes in similar to it. If I'm holding multiple rewards cards across different banks, I have a difficulty tracking the points expiry. How do you advise, because we don't want to put money on the table, we want to maximize and optimize. What is your well, I guess advice to all of us on what we can do?
Yeah, so obviously collecting points from different banks does require a bit more diligence, right? Because all of a sudden, instead of dealing with one bank's currency, I'm dealing with 2 or 3 or 4. And at the same time, if you let your points expire, then you are losing the miles game, because the bank has then earned from you. So it does require some tracking. Obviously, it's a lot easier to do so now than it was 10 years ago. Now, bank apps tend to be better built. I say tend to be because that doesn't apply for every single bank, not naming names. But yes, you can track your points expiry. You can set calendar reminders. And there are also, I think it's part of, personal discipline, if you want to play the miles game, that you do track these things, because the worst thing you can do is to let those points expire unused. In that case, you might as well have earned cash back from the start, because at least that cash back would have gone somewhere.
That's my biggest worry, because I don't track it well.
Yes, there are some credit cards out there which have non-expiring points, right? Which you can also consider. At the same time, though, I also feel that the whole idea behind the miles game is to earn and burn, right? Not earn and hold. Because I will say this very clearly for the record, that miles are the worst investment to hold, right? They don't earn interest, they can only be devalued, and they're not insured in case something happens to the airline, right? So, it used to be a very antiquated notion that 10 years ago, that you have this archetype of a salaryman who works his whole life and then uses his miles for his retirement travels. Maybe that would have worked a long time ago, but these days, with the pace of airline award chart adjustments, devaluation, right, you don't hold on to your miles. You try and spend them wherever you can, right? And that means that you shouldn't be holding them for so long that expiry comes into the picture.
Yeah, me and Aaron were just having a conversation around this. I was like, I find it very hard to use it, because I just cannot figure out when I can redeem and the time frame that I require as well. Let's take this question down here. So, Hui Min, we're just going to shift it a bit, right? So we did talk about being aware of credit cards. What do we need to be concerned? Well, we have the benefits, but also safeguard against the potential debt pitfall. So I understand you have a couple of slides to share with us, some very practical, actionable tips for all of us.
Sure, let's see. Okay, the slide ready. All right, okay. Okay, when we use credit card, it is still very important.
I invite you to just move so that we can all hear.
Okay, I think it is very important to do something very fundamental, which is to have a budget. Okay, and the 50, 30, 20% is quite commonly suggested, right? 50% for our routine expenses, 30% for some fun, and then save at least 20%. Okay, I think many of you probably have heard about this suggestion. But as you can see, I have highlighted some items like food and groceries, transportation, meals at work, dining out and entertainment, travel and holidays and gifts and donations, okay? Now, these are items that I suppose oftentimes we can use our credit card to make payment, right? Nowadays, we actually use our credit card to pay for almost everything as long as the seller accepts credit card payments, okay? So by just charging for all these things, I think we can put quite a bit of money on our credit card bill, easily, I suppose, 1,000 or more per month. That will help us to earn points, okay? It will also help us to probably qualify for not paying our subscription fee, okay? And since these are things that we will have to pay, especially for food and groceries, transportation, meals at work, okay? And dining out, yeah, especially the credit card let us have discount or double bonus point, something like that. Yep. So And to me, credit card, one thing is it has a convenience and it has a safety aspect. You know, you don't have to bring so much cash out of Singapore because you have credit card. Okay, so that is, to me, is safety. Okay, now, the next thing is tools for budgeting and monitoring spending. For those of you who are really very high-tech, you know, very comfortable using apps, there are many tools that can help you to monitor your spending. Now, it is important to have a plan, which is the budget, but it is also very important to monitor. There's no point of having a plan, but you do not know whether you are doing what you're supposed to do. So you need to spend time to monitor. All right, I'm old-fashioned. I use Excel spreadsheet. And to be very frank, I do see myself spending more than what I plan to spend. Okay, but good thing I got a bit of buffer lah, you know, so that it still can cover the expenses. So I'm aware, you know, and I can take action to, you know, cut down, you know, like say, okay, I already taken too much of a Grab. Okay, so maybe for the last week of the month, I should forget about taking taxi or Grab, you know, to make sure that I don't overspend. Then the other thing is that use credit card wisely to avoid that spiral. Okay, I can't help but to remind again, pay on time and in full. Okay, because we enjoy the interest-free of a month, right? We use the credit card to pay, so I enjoy to have the interest-free usage of the credit. But when it's time to pay, I pay in full. Then I wouldn't have to pay for the interest. And like what Aaron has mentioned, you know, I mean, if I need to start paying interest for what I put into my credit card, it negates all the benefits. And even including, okay, there's an item assuming that you have been wanting to buy something expensive, let's say $5,000. And then the shop say, oh, now they have a special promotion, special discount, $500 cheaper. Happy, right? Now I need to only pay $4,500. So if I were to use my credit card to pay, but I can't pay it all within the same month, not even within the next month, or even within the third month, frankly speaking, the interest will catch up, and at the end of it, I don't get to enjoy the $500 saving at all. I may, in fact, pay more than $5,000 if I can continue to slowly pay off over the next 12 months or longer. Okay. Now, for those of us, okay, who have some outstanding in our credit cards, to be very frank, if you want to pay down, you have to stop using your credit card. Because as I pay and I continue to charge, it will not go down, right? I mean, so I have to stop using my credit card until I pay off. Then I start using again. And to pay off, you need to have a plan, okay? For example, if I have, assuming I have $3,000 outstanding on my credit card now, I look at my budget, okay? Sit down, stock take. How much can I set aside to pay? All right? Now, at $3,000, I think your credit card bill probably asks you to pay 3% of $50, whichever is higher. 3% of $3,000 is $90. So probably my credit card bill will ask me to pay $90 for the first month. And if I stop using it, the next month I will be asked to pay $80 over. It will go down. Slow, but it will go down. Okay? But if you want it to make it fast, then I cannot just pay, I can't just pay what the minimum payment asks me to pay. Even if I pay $250 per month, that will add up to $3,000 a year. But that is without interest charge. So even if I pay $250 per month, after 12 months, I will still have some outstanding. But at least the outstanding probably is less. Just a few $100. So there must be a plan, okay? Next thing is that smart tips on borrowing with savviness. First thing, ask ourselves, what is the purpose? Why do I need to use my credit card to pay? Why do I need to apply for that loan? I'm not saying that we can only borrow for a need. Even if we borrow for a want, at least we know why we are borrowing. For what purpose? Does that item really satisfy me? Really give me the I don't know, I mean the utility that I expect to have? Then the next thing is that if I want to borrow, I better know whether I can afford. Okay, signing up an installment plan at $300 a month may be affordable to me, but do I really know my numbers? If I really sit down and look at all the installment plan I have signed up, is it really just $300 a month that I'm paying, or is it more? Okay, and is it within my budget? It may not be. If it's not within my budget, then I shouldn't be taking up that loan or signing up for the installment plan. Then next, but I really need it. How? Think of options. You see, sometimes when we buy things, we just say, oh, I like that one. Okay, it got so many features. But frankly speaking, do I use all the features? Do I use all the functions of the item? If not, if what I need is a fridge that is big enough for me to put my 1 week's grocery, do I really need to buy a $3,000 fridge? Or can I go for a $1,500 fridge that actually satisfy what I need? Okay, so options, look at it. Okay, I mean, these are things that, okay, it will be PAO, so think of PAO. Okay, when you want to buy something on a credit, think of PAO. What's the purpose? Can I afford to take up another loan? Do I have options to buy something that is more affordable and meet my needs? And hopefully this will help us to manage our borrowing better.
Great, great tips down there. Thank you for these best practices. Always to keep in mind, as you're maximizing the rewards as well. Going to shift gear again, getting back to maximizing rewards. Aaron, there's a question that has come in. What would be the ideal miles strategy to look like for couples? Should we each get our own card as couples, or, is there a principal supplementary arrangement that is better? What are your advice around that?
Sure. So I think this boils down to how much you expect to spend, right? So one important thing to highlight is that, let's say you and your partner, spouse, or whatever, let's say you've got a big life event, your wedding, your renovation, your birth of a child, and you know that you've already budgeted for this amount of money. Then one thing that might make sense, right, is for each of you to get a principal credit card of your own, for the simple reason that when it comes to things like welcome bonuses, banks issue them on an individual basis, right? So if each of you were to get a principal card, and if each of you were to meet the minimum spend for the welcome offer, then you enjoy double as compared to what you'd have if only one person signed up. So that's scenario A, where you know that your spending is going to be at a level where you can meet the minimum spend on each person without any issues. The second scenario is if you feel that your spending won't be enough, well, then the answer is not to spend more. The answer is then to say, okay, well, if I apply for a principal card and if I give my wife a supplementary card, remember that the spending of the supplementary card holder is taken to be the spending of the principal card holder, which is why you don't give a supplementary card to a person you don't trust. So if, for example, this welcome offer requires us to spend, I don't know, $4,000 in the space of 1 month. If I spend $3,000 and she spends $1,000, it's taken as if I've spent $4,000. So it really, this whole, call it two-player mode if you want to, boils down to how much you expect to spend, right? If you're able to meet the minimum spend by yourself, if the spending is sufficient, then absolutely, by all means, get two different cards and then enjoy double the welcome offers. But if you feel that you need some help, then a principal and a supplementary card holder arrangement will work.
Okay, so that hopefully that gives you some ideas as well. So it still boils back to actually what are you capable or willing to spend as well. Okay, the other question is this, okay? What are my options when it comes to credit cards and maximizing the rewards if I don't draw a fixed salary? Because this day, especially just now our last talk as well, sometimes you are in this gig economy, perhaps. What would be your advice around this if we still want to maximize the rewards game?
Yeah, it's a good question. So there are several options available for people. So I would assume that this individual perhaps does not meet the MAS mandated $30,000 minimum for a credit card. In this situation, it's possible to get what's called a secured credit card. As the name suggests, a secured credit card is a credit card where it's backed by something. So it's not unsecured credit. I'll typically have to go down to the bank, open a fixed deposit, say $10,000, and then that becomes my credit line. So in that case, I can still enjoy all the benefits of the credit card, the miles, the rewards, what have you. But my credit limit is then determined by how much I have put in the fixed deposit. So it's kind of like a debit card on steroids, I guess you could call it that. There are also other alternatives on the market. So things like there's this thing called a micro credit card. What it is that these are products created for people who don't draw a steady income, but the credit limit is fixed at $500. These in general don't really have very good rewards. So most of the time, I don't feel they're really worth getting involved with. I'm not sure if you're in that situation, then maybe it's better to not to spend your time focusing so much on credit card rewards, but maybe on getting yourself to a point in your career where you're able to apply for a proper credit card. But those are some of the options. And I think, again, I should probably caveat that if your income is not stable, or if you're working on an ad hoc kind of project basis, then you also have to exercise a bit more caution, right? Especially with the whole credit aspect of the credit cards, right? So obviously you don't want to spend more than you already have.
Okay, last question around this that we wanted to take from the audience is, and I'll couple it together. Should I pay annual fee to get miles? That's one. And also for some other facilities like Cut Up, where we have to pay an admin fee so they can earn rewards. What are some of your practical tips, or perhaps what is your own practice around this?
So both questions touch on both questions boil down to the same thing. How much do you value a mile, right? And this question can be subjective, right? If you're someone who would normally pay for first and business class tickets, then obviously your value of a mile is going to be very high, because then redeeming miles saves you from having to spend that amount of money, right? But if your regular mode of travel is like, say, Scoot or a budget carrier, then you can't logically value your miles that high, because if you didn't have miles, it's not like you're going to buy a first class ticket anyway, right? So for everyone, that figure is going to be different, right? I think in general, most people will fall between the 1.5 to 2 cents range. But like I said, it is a subjective figure, and everyone's going to have to do those sums for themselves. So with that figure in mind, right, it becomes a very simple mathematical question, right? If the annual fee is X dollars and you get Y number of miles, then X divided by Y then becomes your cost per mile. And if that is below your value of a mile, then by all means go ahead, because you then come out on top. But then the inverse can apply as well. So with bill payment services, whether it's Card Up, whether it's CityPay, or all these, again, same question, right? So maybe for the benefit of those of you who are not familiar, typically things like rental, income tax, insurance premiums, utilities bills either cannot be paid with a credit card, or if you can pay with a credit card, then they're not eligible to earn rewards because they're excluded by the bank. So these payment services, these bill payment services say that, okay, you pay those bills through us, we'll charge you a small admin fee, and in return, you can earn the rewards. So straight away, the question on your mind should be, well, then does the admin fee, do the rewards justify the admin fee? And then that becomes another math question, right? You calculate how much you're paying per mile. Does that then fall within what you think is acceptable? These can obviously be a great way to save on a ticket. So for example, let's say, hypothetically, you were buying miles at 1 cent each, which has been possible historically, right? And you want to redeem a business class ticket to, say, Europe, right, which would be slightly over 100,000 miles. You do the math there, 100,000 into 1 cent is about $1,000, right? So yeah, I mean, I think most people will be willing to pay $1,000 for a one-way business class ticket to Europe, right? And those are situations where you can get outsized value, because what you redeem for is worth a lot more than what you put inside. So absolutely, it can make sense, but you need to know how much you value a mile and base your decisions on that.
Well, it does sound like, Aaron, what you're describing, it does require certain trait for an individual to be able to play this miles game, right? So if your advice could be for this audience, who would be suitable to be in this miles game?
I think it requires a certain amount of meticulousness, because I'm not going to lie, right? Obviously, when you start dealing with different credit cards, different banks, there are TNCs you need to be aware of. there's stuff you need to know. You need to know when your points expire. You need to know the earn rates. You need to know the exclusions, right? These are just hygiene factors before you even want to collect miles. If you're the kind of person who doesn't want to learn all that stuff, then I don't think it's the right hobby for you. The second has to do with impulse control. Now, again, coming back to the core thing I think we're talking about, that if you feel a credit card is going to make you spend more money than you otherwise would have, then that is a very dangerous place to be in, right? So always advocate that credit cards are a way for you to earn a better rebate on what you would have spent anyway. Right. So I feel that if you have that personality, if you are able to control your expenses, if you're willing to be meticulous about how you collect and spend your points, then you'll find credit cards, that the milestone can be extremely rewarding. But on the other hand, if you're someone who is not very detail-oriented, if you feel you have impulse control issues, then I would strongly encourage you to either look at cashback or to look at using a so-called safer solution like a debit card instead for your spending.
So you need to know yourself as well. I know when I ask who loves to travel, everybody put up their hand. And then to figure out actually what suits you best so that you can practice this responsible and smart credit spending.
I think the other thing I would emphasize here is that as much as I advocate that people should redeem their miles, have lots of great holidays, holidays in themselves are also kind of like a gateway drug because no one goes on a vacation to just sit in your room and do nothing, right? Obviously, when I go overseas, even if I'm saving money on the ticket, even if I pay close to nothing for the ticket, well, I still need to pay for the hotel, I still need to pay for the restaurants, I still need to pay for my shopping. So again, as much as we all want to earn those miles, you also need to keep in mind that
it is a gateway to spending
it's a gateway
more.
to spending. It can be, right? And I think one of the mistakes that people often make is to think psychologically, because I am saving money on the ticket, well, then I can spend
the
more
more I
somewhere
can
else.
spend more.
Exactly, yeah.
Okay, last question down here for you, Huey Min. And I would love to get your advice around this. Someone is sharing that they think that their family member has poor debt management. How then can I convince him or her to seek credit counselling?
All right. A lot of times the debtor, they don't think they have an issue, okay? Especially when the family members are so supportive to help. I'm going to use the word just him, to pay off. So one thing not to do is not just to pay off like that, okay? So to convince, that is going to be like almost going to warn them. If you're not going to do something about it, we're not going to care about you. Sounds terrible, right? But sometimes people, they don't. To them is that, you're going to be so concerned about me, you love me, you will help me, so they won't take it seriously. So if you have to stop paying for them, that may help them to face the problem, perhaps, and you can be supportive, all right? You can say that, okay, while you're making repayment, we will take care of most of the household expenses so that you have more money to repay your own debt. Can be supportive that way, but not to help him to pay off totally, because it won't help, generally speaking, it won't. All right, I got no really answer, because we come across individuals, they are being brought in by their family members. And, why is because he doesn't think that he has a problem. And the family members say, if you don't come with me to Credit Counselling Singapore, I'm not going to care about you anymore. So he comes, you know what I mean? Yeah.
So a bit of tough love, you're saying?
Yeah, tough love, yes.
Tough love.
In a way, I would say tough love. Yeah.
When are the ones that you really see that switch happens?
To be very frank, most of the times people wait until the problem is too big, meaning that they can't even service the minimum payment. That's when they say, oops, because they cannot roll anymore.
Right.
They cannot get new credit facilities anymore. They can't even pay the minimum payment. They start receiving phone calls. A lot of times people wake up.
Okay. So when they see the real life consequences. All right, we're about to wrap already. So we've got about 2 minutes left on the clock. So each of you, if you could just give one key takeaway for their audience member when it comes to maximizing reward with smart and responsible credit spending, what would you say? One sentence. This is the surprise question that what do you think? What do you think?
Okay, I only have to share about how to use it wisely to our benefit. So that's why I would say, again, I just want to remind all of you, remember, POW. What is the purpose? Can I afford? Is there options?
Thank you. Aaron?
Yeah, I think I've kind of used my thesis statement at the start of this already, right? But it's the whole idea of credit card rewards. Credit cards are a way of not leaving money on the table, not a way of putting more money down. And I do realize the irony was saying this in MBS right now, but it just dawned on me. We're in MBS. Yes.
All right, thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me to give a big round of applause to Aaron as well as Huey Min for giving us a sense of how we can maximize rewards, but yet with smart and responsible credit spending as well.